Oh, my love.
It started with a scratchy recording in Memphis, a nervous young man at Sun Studio, a local DJ who took a risk. By the end of 1956, that voice had set off a coast-to-coast mania, topping charts, shattering racial and generational barriers, and making grown men fear for the country's soul. But how did Elvis Presley really become so good and so dangerous so quickly? The answer changes how we measure greatness in music. It all began with one song nobody expected. In the summer heat of 1953, a teenage truck driver walked into Sun Studio on Union Avenue with $4 and a dream. He asked Marion Keisker, Sam Phillips's assistant, if he could pay to record a song, just to hear what his voice sounded like on vinyl. The acetate he left behind wasn't perfect, but it caught something raw and uncertain that stuck in Keisker's mind. She scribbled a note next to his name, "Good ballad singer. Hold." A year passed. Sam Phillips, always searching for a white singer with a black feel, invited Elvis back for another try. In July 1954, after hours of failed takes, the session was almost over. Then, during a break, Elvis started fooling around with Arthur Crudup's "That's All Right." Scotty Moore and Bill Black joined in. The room lit up. Phillips hit record. What came out was neither country nor blues, but something electric, something new. Dewey Phillips, no relation to Sam, ran a late-night radio show on WHBQ. He got the acetate and played it on July 8, 1954. The phone lines jammed. Teenagers called in, demanding to know who the singer was. Dewey played the song 14 times in a row. He tracked Elvis down at his parents' house and brought him on air, live and nervous, to prove he wasn't black. In that moment, a local nobody became the talk of Memphis. The single spread fast through jukeboxes and record shops across the South. Small-town dance halls started booking him. The Sun Studio sound, slap-back echo, upright bass, wild rhythm, became a calling card. Elvis's name appeared on handbills alongside country stars and R&B acts. He was still driving a truck by day, but at night crowds were growing. The fuse had been lit. Within months, what started in a tiny Memphis studio was rolling out across state lines, turning a shy kid with a guitar into the South's next obsession. Late in 1955, a phone call changed the course of American music. Colonel Tom Parker, a relentless showman with a gambler's instincts, arranged the sale of Elvis's Sun Records contract to RCA Victor. The price, $35,000, set a new high for a regional artist. For the first time, the biggest label in the business put its full weight behind a Southern singer with a wild reputation and a sound that defied easy labels. RCA's national machine went to work overnight. Press photos, advanced singles, and a flurry of radio promotions blanketed the country. In January 1956, RCA shipped thousands of copies of Heartbreak Hotel, a song drenched in echo and loneliness, to record stores coast to coast. Within weeks, the single shot up the charts. By March, Heartbreak Hotel hit #1 on Billboard's pop chart, selling over 1 million copies and turning a Memphis phenomenon into a national obsession. The RCA logo on the label meant access to every jukebox, every radio station, every living room with a turntable. No longer a local curiosity, Elvis's voice and image reached Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, places he had never set foot, but where teenagers now screamed his name. Magazine covers followed. Life, Look, and TV Guide all put him on their front pages. Department stores sold out of his records. Fan mail flooded RCA's New York office by the sack. The speed was dizzying. In less than 3 months, Elvis went from driving a truck to dominating the American pop charts. His first RCA album, released in March 1956, soared to #1. For the first time, a rock and roll artist outsold the crooners and big bands that ruled radio. The industry had never seen a rise like this, fueled by a new kind of energy, a new kind of audience, and a label willing to bet everything on a 21-year-old from Tupelo. By spring, America wasn't just aware of Elvis Presley, it was hooked. Sunday sermons thundered warnings. In pulpits and newspapers, grown men and women called for action. Headlines labeled Elvis Presley a menace. Preachers in small towns and big cities alike condemned his records from the altar. Letters poured into local editors, demanding radio stations pull his songs and schools ban his posters. The National Parent-Teacher Association issued statements about the dangers of rock and roll, naming Elvis as public enemy #1 for American teenagers. Editorials described his performances as animalistic, his movements suggestive, his voice savage. One Miami judge declared that if he ever returns, he'll be arrested for disorderly conduct. In St. Louis, a Catholic magazine warned that his act could inflame the baser instincts of the young. Moral crusaders called for boycotts. Ministers met with police chiefs, urging them to keep Elvis out of their towns. Some cities even debated ordinances to outlaw hip-swinging on stage. The press ran stories about parents barricading their daughters in their bedrooms on concert nights. Critics accused him of corrupting the nation's youth, fueling juvenile delinquency, and crossing racial lines that polite society tried to keep sealed. The louder the condemnation, the more teenagers lined up for tickets. Every warning, every angry sermon, every printed insult only added fuel. The sense of danger was real and everywhere, on the radio, in the pews, at the breakfast table. In 1956, Elvis Presley wasn't just a singer. To a generation of adults, he was a public crisis. And the storm was just getting started. Jacksonville, Florida, 1955. The night air crackled with anticipation as thousands pressed against makeshift barricades, waiting for a glimpse of the boy from Memphis. When Elvis hit the stage, the crowd erupted. Teenagers surged forward, breaking through police lines, clawing for a piece of his shirt, a lock of hair, anything to prove they had touched him. Officers formed a human wall, but it barely held. For a moment, control slipped away. Screams drowned out the music. Girls fainted in the heat and chaos. Elvis was hustled off stage, clothes torn, hair mussed, heart pounding. Local officials called it a near riot. The next morning, headlines warned of hysteria and danger. A year later, city leaders remembered every second. In August 1956, as Elvis returned for 6 sold-out shows at the Florida Theater, the mood was electric, tense. The juvenile court judge called him into chambers before the first curtain. One wrong move, he said, and there would be consequences. The threat was real. Perform as usual and risk arrest for obscenity. Inside the theater, the tension was palpable. Security lined the aisles. Medical teams stood ready as the crowd, mostly teenage girls, packed every seat, shrieking at the slightest movement. Elvis barely moved, mocking the order with a sly wiggle of his little finger. But the screams only grew louder. The noise was so intense, band members later said they couldn't hear their own instruments. Police and paramedics watched from the wings, prepared for anything. Dozens of fans fainted, overcome by heat, excitement, and the crush of bodies. Outside, parents and church leaders waited anxiously, hoping the chaos wouldn't spill into the streets. For 2 days, Jacksonville was a powder keg. The city had never seen anything like it. The message was clear. Elvis Presley on stage meant more than just music. It meant a kind of frenzy that no one, not police, not judges, not even Elvis himself, could fully control. Elvis Presley stood in line at the Memphis Draft Board on March 24, 1958, surrounded by reporters and flashbulbs. He wore a simple suit. His hair was longer than military regulations would allow. The world's most famous singer was about to become Private Presley, serial number 533-10761. Within hours, newsreel cameras captured the moment his sideburns fell to the barber's floor. The footage ran in theaters from New York to Tokyo. For 2 years, Elvis served as a regular soldier, first at Fort Hood, then in Friedberg, Germany. He refused special treatment. He shared barracks, pulled guard duty, and drove a Jeep. The Army offered him a spot in the entertainment division, but he turned it down. He wanted the world to see he was not above anyone else. Back home, Colonel Parker and RCA refused to let the momentum die. Before Elvis shipped out, they filled the vaults with unreleased tracks. Singles like Wear My Ring Around Your Neck and A Big Hunk of Love hit the charts while he was still in uniform. Fan magazines ran photos of Elvis in fatigues, smiling with fellow soldiers, or standing beside his mother in Germany. Even in absence, his records sold by the millions. In 1959 alone, he scored multiple top 10 hits without setting foot in a studio. The gamble paid off. Instead of fading, his reputation grew. By the time his discharge papers came in March 1960, Elvis was no longer just a rebel icon. He was seen as a responsible American, a son who answered the call of duty. The world had watched him trade sequins for stripes and come back with his credibility and his fame intact. January 14, 1973. In Honolulu, a nervous production crew watched the countdown as the world's most famous singer stepped on stage in a white jumpsuit. This was Aloha from Hawaii, the first concert broadcast live by satellite across continents, a technical gamble that had never been attempted for a solo performer. Colonel Tom Parker, always thinking bigger than the competition, had promised the world an event no one could match. He wanted more than a tour. He wanted Elvis to be everywhere at once. Engineers from RCA and NBC worked for months to link up satellites over the Pacific, coordinate feeds in Japan, Australia, and parts of Europe, and keep the signal clear across time zones. The show's production costs soared past $2.5 million, a staggering sum for a single concert. Parker's team hyped the broadcast as a global happening. Press releases claimed a potential audience of over 1 billion, a number that dwarfed even the Apollo moon landing. The real figure is still debated, but the scale was undeniable. Dozens of countries carried the show, some live, and some on tape delay, bringing Elvis's voice and image into homes from Manila to London. Elvis delivered a set built for maximum impact. CC Rider, Burning Love, Suspicious Minds, and a closing An American Trilogy that soared over the Pacific airwaves. He looked lean, focused, and utterly in command, backed by a full orchestra and a wall of backup singers. No other star, not Sinatra, not the Beatles, had ever attempted a solo broadcast on this scale. And Elvis did it without ever leaving American soil. He became the first artist to turn a single concert into a planetary event, proving that his power reached far beyond the limits of any stage or stadium. In the age before YouTube, before global pop tours, one man's performance circled the earth in real time. The world had never seen anything like it. Numbers rarely tell the whole story, but with Elvis Presley, the numbers are impossible to ignore. In the United States alone, his albums have earned more than 146 million RIAA certified sales, more than any solo artist in history, over 100 gold records, dozens of platinum and multi-platinum awards. Only the Beatles and Garth Brooks even come close to that kind of certified dominance. Industry sources estimate his total global record sales near 500 million, and his estate and label claim the figure could top 1 billion units. Even the most cautious tally puts him in a league with the Beatles and Michael Jackson. No one else is even close. On the charts, the scale is just as staggering. Elvis landed more than 100 singles on major United States pop charts, with dozens reaching the top 10 and multiple number ones. In some international rankings, counting every country separately, His #1 singles run into the hundreds. His albums, originals, soundtracks, and compilations spent years on the Billboard charts, cementing his place as a fixture of American music. Television brought another kind of record. When Elvis first appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1956, the broadcast drew an estimated 60 million viewers, over a third of the entire United States population. That kind of audience share is almost unthinkable today. Later specials like the 1968 NBC Comeback and the 1973 Aloha from Hawaii satellite concert pulled in tens of millions more. Promotional claims for Aloha boasted a potential global audience of up to 1 billion, with realistic estimates still landing in the hundreds of millions. For a single concert, no one had ever reached so far, so fast. No matter how you measure it, sales, chart hits, or audience reach, Elvis Presley's numbers set the bar for pop stardom. The records he set were not just impressive for his era. Many of them still stand untouched decades later. Elvis Presley's impact left marks that still spark debate. His sound drew deeply from black gospel, blues, and rhythm and blues, traditions he grew up with in segregated Memphis. Early hits like That's All Right and Hound Dog were first recorded by black artists. Some musicians saw him as a bridge to wider audiences. Others pointed to a system that rewarded him while leaving originators in the shadows. Decades later, scholars and critics still argue over what it means for a white singer to build a fortune on music rooted in black experience. The question of cultural appropriation follows his legacy wherever it goes, complicating the story of his genius, but never erasing it. Behind the stage lights, the cost of fame was steep. The pressure to perform, relentless touring, and the demands of management wore him down. In the final years, Elvis relied on a growing list of prescription drugs to manage pain, anxiety, and exhaustion. His health declined sharply, weight fluctuated, energy faded, and his once commanding presence sometimes slipped into struggle. The world woke up to his death on August 16, 1977, at just 42 years old. The shock was immediate and worldwide. Lines formed at Graceland, and the myth of Elvis, already larger than life, took on new weight. But the story did not end there. Graceland became a place of pilgrimage. Over 600,000 visitors come each year, making it one of the most visited private homes in America. Fans from every continent gather to walk the halls, leave flowers, and remember a man who changed music forever. The jumpsuits, the sunglasses, the sideburns, they live on in tribute artists, festivals, and wedding chapels from Las Vegas to Tokyo. For every chart record and every controversy, there is a human story at the center. A young man from Mississippi who became a symbol, and whose influence still echoes in pop culture decades after his last song faded. Today, Elvis's voice still sells millions of records. His image fuels a billion-dollar industry. In an era obsessed with viral fame, his impact reminds us, real cultural lightning does not just break charts. It rewrites what pop stardom means. The world still asks, can anyone ever shake the world like he did?
Woo!